The following podcast is a Good Mic Work Commentaries production. Join Greg Morgan weekly as he breaks down the action from Raw, SmackDown, NXT, AEW, and more. Full video versions of the show, along with many other wrestling discussions and reviews, can be found on the Good Mic Work Commentaries YouTube channel. Be sure to rate the show and leave a review. Enjoy the podcast.
The running gag that I do on Twitter when I can't watch a show live, where I say, let me know what happens tonight on AEW Dynamite or NXT or SmackDown or Raw, and let me know if CM Punk comes back, might actually be coming true. Holy shit, y'all. What a great time to be a wrestling fan. Big news to get into. It's going to dominate this little mini podcast here. Happy Thursday to you, by the way. Thanks for being here. Sorry I wasn't able to get up yesterday. I'm a couple of days away from a week-long vacation, so I'm working my ass off. Otherwise, I would have been here sooner to talk about this, but I figured this afternoon would work out perfect because we can not only talk about the big news, rumors circulating yesterday and reports about Daniel Bryan signing with AEW and CM Punk in talks with AEW, and last night, Fyter Fest Night 2 was an amazing show. Just fucking killer. So we're going to talk about Dynamite later on, but this is mostly going to be spent discussing the CM Punk and Daniel Bryan stuff, the rumors, the reports, the speculation, what we could see from them if and when they do appear over on that other show, and just discuss the circumstances of all of this and what this means for everything in terms of the wrestling landscape. And it's a very strange time right now. We just came off a 1.5 year long pandemic. We're still in it, really. Could easily come back and put us down again. But it's an odd time, and wrestling is ripe for a change in terms of, just the nonsense we've been fed from WWE so long, and wrestling fans in general just need something else to watch that they can watch if they're just sick of the other guys. And finally, we have that now, and they mean business. And I've been saying for 10 years, you can go through 10 years of videos on my channel, I always said, if anybody's ever going to really, truly compete with WWE, the name I always used was Mark Cuban. I was like, it's going to take somebody like him. It's going to take some stupid, ridiculous billionaire that just doesn't mind spending the money and will spend the money. And we finally have that now. And arguably the two biggest free agents that, modern wrestling has really seen are now available and are, could be signed if the price is right, if the situation is right. And that is awesome. So we're going to talk about that. I think there's no harm in being excited. I see a lot of sourpusses. I'll believe it when I see it, which I agree with, actually. I actually don't disagree with the I'll believe it when I see it argument, especially when it comes to Punk. But as we've seen for so many years, when CM Punk's name has come up for a potential return, we always take it with a grain of salt. We don't even pay it much mind. Even when he came back to the FS1 show, the WWE Backstage, there was something about it. Didn't feel like he was going to be turning back up in the ring. And plus, if he did in a WWE ring, you've almost now spoiled how awesome that could have been by bringing him out on that studio show. I predicted CM Punk to appear at All Out 2 years ago in 2019. And I said, he's going to show up. He'd be stupid not to. He would make such a big splash, such a big impact. What a way to, welcome AEW into the wrestling world and get them on the map with a bang and start them off right. I thought for sure he'd do it then. But now that AEW's been around for a couple of years and they've survived this whole ridiculous pandemic, their crowds and their production and their TV is really, really hot with an audience. And, they've got money behind them. So if you're CM Punk, what better time is there to return to the wrestling business than right now? There's never been a better opportunity. He's got to be the most stubborn motherfucker in the world if he winds up turning this down. If they are talking to him and offering him any kind of money, serious money, and say, come in, think of the guys you can work with. I know there's going to be some issues that have to be worked out. But if he was really, truly thinking about it, I think the fans should take this situation a little bit more seriously than others, because this now seems plausible for once. This doesn't seem like it's coming out of thin air. When you look at what's going on, you're like, yeah, I can kind of see that. This would make a lot of sense. They would probably throw a ton of money at him. And that's what I got to give credit for AEW for doing, is that if they pull this off, props to them for realizing that, hey, we got an opportunity here. we're never going to dethrone WWE or put them out of business or anything like that. Any fan who thinks that is an idiot. But they definitely have an opportunity to catch them with a strong fucking right hook and kind of knock them on the ropes a little bit and say, hey, you ain't the only game in town anymore. We can sell out 20,000 seat arenas as well, as we're about to do at Arthur Ashe in a couple of months, or 15K, whatever it is. Bringing two guys in like this that truly could balance the scales, not tip the scales, but just, make it a little bit less one-sided. This is it. So and plus, if he's thinking about it still on the fence, not sure, just because whatever the hell's going on in Punk's head, the Bryan Danielson signing might be just the last little push he needs to convince him to go. You know what I mean? So this is incredible news that we want to kind of unpack and talk about here. But I want to give credit, of course, first to Fightful Select, who broke the story yesterday. This was the first bombshell. Yesterday, we got hit with two big bombshells right in the face, just a few hours apart. And Fightful Select was the ones that initially reported CM Punk was actually in talks with AEW about a return. No specifics on money, no specifics on timetable, anything like that. All they knew was that conversations were taking place. And when you hear that, for me, it's just, it's mostly, with Punk, it's not all about money, but at least I know you do have owners there that, will spend what they have to spend if it means, advancing their company and advancing their product. And they got another show starting. They're starting to expand in terms of more content and stuff like that. You need, as many big stars as you can get, and you're not going to find too many situations in wrestling history where you have free agents out there that are this big. That at least aren't, some free agents when they're not there, like Brock, he's kind of always tied to WWE, but there's some, when Samoa Joe got released, I'm like, shit, I was hoping he'd show up there like the very next week on Dynamite. I'm like, man, if they could get Samoa Joe and then Daniel Bryan or whatever, that would be incredible. But Daniel Bryan, I always just kind of assumed would stick with WWE. So to me, a lot of this is surprising because I just wasn't thinking that this was a real possibility, but now it sounds like it is, and we got two big shows coming up on the horizon, All Out and that Arthur Ashe Dynamite in September. Holy fuck. Yeah. So, yeah. Jesus. So the Punk news yesterday was exciting enough because we're like, okay, now you can start kind of thinking about a return for him. He's got to be thinking, at least in his head, that if I'm ever going to return to wrestling, I better think about doing it because I'm now in my 40s, I believe, right? So, if you're going to come back, you better do it while you still can instead of just waking up one day at age 54 and like, fuck, I never went back to wrestling. Forgot. So if he's going to do it, there's probably never been an opportunity to, number one, make money because you've got, an owner that will pay you. Number two, make an impact and a splash and actually move that needle somewhat, which for 10 years on this YouTube channel, I said nobody will ever put a dent in WWE, ever. It's not going to happen. And now I've changed my tune. Now it's like nobody's ever going to put WWE out of business. Nobody's going to ever overtake them as the number one wrestling company. WWE just has their heels dug in too deep. It's not the same as the 90s. AEW can't do what WCW did, but what they can do is survive on their own, survive as a separate wrestling company, an alternative wrestling product to watch. Because if you watch AEW, they've been around 2 years now, pro wrestling is still pro wrestling, and no matter what company you're in, it's still going to be similar because it's pro wrestling. But they do things differently than WWE. They present their product differently. It does feel like an alternative company, and that was all I ever asked out of a company. I got so hard on TNA's case back in the day because I felt like they were blowing it. The fans that sit there and say AEW is just WWE cast-offs, they are fools. They have not the first ounce of idea or understanding of wrestling history and how much talent, when you have two companies or multiple companies, big wrestling companies, how much of that talent goes back and forth all the time. If you don't understand that, you're fucking blind. And AEW does not just rely on past WWE guys because they make their own guys like Cassidy and Darby Allin and Jungle Boy and a whole slew of others, MJF, that occupy a lot of TV time on their show. But you still have to build a company with other guys. You still need established stars, and you have the money to pay them now. You're in the big time. You should be able to afford the big time to bring in the Jerichos, the Moxleys, guys like that to help get your company started. So you have upstart talent, you have talent that you're making, and you have stars already established to really help get the ball rolling, and that's what they've done. TNA, I felt like, was the company that was doing way too much of the WWE cast-off shit, because as soon as somebody was available, they were on TV immediately winning the title. Rob Van Dam and Jeff Hardy and Kennedy and everybody. You know what I mean? Angle is an exception because Angle should be champion anywhere he is. But that's what they were doing, and I felt like they were taking that to the extreme. Yeah, they had Joe, they had AJ, they had some guys there, but they were taking a back seat to everybody else. And AEW, it feels much more like of a team effort, and they have much more of an understanding of what it takes to actually compete. And they need, when they have opportunities, they need not let them pass by. If they think they've got a shot at Daniel Bryan, go for it. Shoot your shot. Same thing with CM Punk. There's going to be some kinks to work out. We're going to have to pay him, but also not make the payment or the pay scale so unbalanced that it creates a rift in the morale in the locker room. You got to work out issues with Colt Cabana. Don't forget, Cabana is there and everything that happened between them. So there's going to have to be a lot of details, I think, worked out if the CM Punk news does come true. But, CM Punk has to understand what a great opportunity this is, and AEW needs to understand what a great opportunity this is. And if they both understand that, and they can come together and they can really, make some waves here, coming off the heels. I mean, look at what we're looking at in WWE. We've all just been, disgusted with Monday Night Raw and the Thunderdome and just how just empty their product feels, and it's just a blob of content and nothing ever really happens, and there's no storytelling. Their booking decisions are all fucked up and they don't know what's going on, and they're rewriting the show, and it's just all this stuff. Now fans come back. We're really excited. Cena is back. SummerSlam's coming up in a couple of weeks. I'm going to be there in Vegas. If you are, hit me with a DM. We'll meet up. When you look at what WWE is doing, the fans just got back, and I think SummerSlam is going to be a really fun time. But even as recent as this past Monday Night Raw, the first Raw with fans back, a lot of people were complaining about the show. It kind of feels like a dud show, and there was some crazy shit that went down with Karrion Kross losing and stuff. I'm like, only WWE can bring fans back after nearly 18 months or 16 months, whatever it was, and then immediately disappoint them on the first night. Only they can accomplish this. So when you got the fans back and you still feel like WWE still isn't really cutting the mustard, this is AEW's chance. Like I said, I'm not an idiot. I'm not saying AEW is now the number one company in the world. Please don't think that's what I'm saying here. And nobody better say that in the chat, because it ain't true. And it's not going to happen. But what we have to hope for is forget about, don't have the Bischoff mentality where I just want to put WWE out of business. I don't think AEW has that mentality. They're not interested in putting them out of business, but they are interested in competing with them. Which is why I think they're, trying so hard to sign some of these free agents. So they can survive and exist separately from WWE, and wrestling fans in general as a whole now benefit because now you have two options to watch. Because even back when TNA was around, even the height of TNA, their TV deals always sucked, and it's like I always felt like they could have been better. And maybe it was because of the financial backing behind them. You needed that Mark Cuban. You needed that somebody that, wipes their ass with 50s. Got so much money they don't even know what to do with. Should I get a seventh yacht? Or should I start a wrestling company? So this is what you need, and this is exciting. And I want to live in a world where we have two wrestling companies. I don't want WWE to explode and go away and disappear. I want them to survive too, because WrestleManias and SummerSlams and a lot of what they do is very, very, very fun. I want both. I want to go back to when there was a WCW and a WWE. We are really close to achieving that. I feel like we're kind of already there. But if these guys jump over there, then it's really going to happen. So this is exciting. To not find the excitement in this, I don't even know how you can even call yourself a wrestling fan. As stale and bland as everything has been, and WWE's monopoly, TNA was the only company that really kind of came close to trying to fight with them. And then when they went on Mondays, look at the ass whipping that they took. If AEW went to Mondays, I don't know if the ass whipping would be that big, because WWE a few weeks ago drew 1.4 and Dynamite drew over 1 million. That's pretty close compared to the numbers that WWE and TNA were doing comparably. So, this is a chance for us to have another place, a credible place where good wrestlers can go and we can watch wrestling that's just not Vince. That's not endless Titantrons and theme musics and commercial breaks and impromptu matches and rematches and, just horribly scripted backstage promos and stupid shit and camera cuts and shaky cameras and all that stuff. There's a place for that. I find WWE programming very entertaining a good portion of the time, but there's also a time where I want to get the fuck away from it. It's just too much. But I still love wrestling, and I don't want to, I don't want to be, I don't want to not watch wrestling. So you got New Japan, you got Ring of Honor, you got Indies or whatever. What we need is something bigger. We need a WCW, and I feel like we've got it now. And this is all exciting. So that's the story on CM Punk. We're going to get into Daniel Bryan in a minute, although I guess I should get used to saying Bryan Danielson. I have not said anything to the chat yet or said hello to any of you guys, so thanks for being here and hanging out today. This will probably be about an hour-long little deal here after we're talking about Punk and Daniel Bryan. We're going to move into a little bit of NXT because I want to talk about Samoa Joe and Karrion Kross, and then we're going to talk about last night's Fyter Fest, which was an excellent card with a great main event, title change, and a debut, and all sorts of crazy shit took place last night. And AEW's rolling, and that's good for them. Is the people that benefit the most from AEW's success is the wrestling fans, because now we got shit to watch that's good, and that's just good. So anyway, we'll get to that later, but let me cruise up here and knock out any super chats that might have been hanging around. Good to see a lot of you guys, usual suspects in here. Ratnick and Big J and Ben, Mark, Lambo, Sam, Colin, Charlie is here, Michael Kumo. We got Sam, Alex, Daryl, Beetle, Cerebrus, Core, Colin, right on, Mark Simpson, George Morris, thanks for the $2, dude. I have to babysit a grown man. What do you think? Just don't bathe him. And that's really my only advice. Chris Miner, thanks for the 5 from you. If Punk Bryan show up on AEW, will WWE finally view them as competition and maybe step their game up? This will be like modern-day Hall and Nash. Yeah, WWE, I do believe, views them as competition just because they are. They're another wrestler. They're another company doing the same thing as you. They are competition, even though if they're, they're young and they're new and they're not that strong yet, but that's what you have to do. You have to get better. And I think AEW is making a conscious effort to do that and grow their company as much as possible. So they, hopefully they won't suffer from any of the downfalls that TNA did, and WCW did. A lot of fans say that they're too obsessed with WWE. I don't see that. You have to take a couple of shots at your competition. You have to. WWE has sent them right back over their way. It's only when you take it too far, when you just go too overboard with it, which I don't think they do. Tony Khan, I think, said something last night in a promo off air about they don't have a performance center. They just have an AEW Dark, and fans are like, well, he's talking about WWE. I'm like, it's just a little comment. It didn't even air. Eddie Kingston a couple of weeks ago stirred up all that controversy because he said something derogatory towards WWE off camera for the live audience to tickle them in their special places, which is how you do things and how you get a reaction from crowds. And fans got all up in arms about it. Where is your fun? Why do wrestling fans refuse to have fun? What kind of fucking lives did they live? What kind of childhood did they have? Did they never get touched or hugged or something? Like, what the fuck, man? Let them have some fun. They're not obsessing. If you want to see obsessive, just rewind back to WCW when they never shut the fuck up about WWE, giving away the results. Bischoff making little snide comments and digs at Vince McMahon, constantly on commentary, constantly talking about Raw on commentary. Just go back and watch the first couple of years of Nitro. It's all Bischoff did. Even on camera, they were doing a lot of shit. He challenged Vince McMahon to a fight on pay-per-view, and they sold pay-per-view buys based on this fight. So don't talk to me about another company being obsessed with WWE. Taking little cheap shots here or there is fine. It's expected. I want it. If they're taking cheap shots on, 4, 5, 6 different times on Dynamite, on camera, on television every week, then maybe come talk to me. But so far, every time I've seen people get all up in arms, it's always been because of some little drop in a promo or something that was off air. It's not even close to as obsessive as WCW or TNA was. I don't know who these fans are that are saying anything, but they don't know what they're talking about. They have no clue of wrestling history, and they have no clue what the other companies did before them that did a hell of a lot worse. And I've maintained that. One of the first things I ever said on my channel. I've been saying it for a decade. It will be your downfall if you become so obsessed with WWE that it becomes your number one focus. TNA took cookies to SmackDown. What are you doing? You're not even real competition. WCW and WWE, WWE took that shot back. They finally fought back after WCW fucking with them for a few years. I was there in Hampton when DX went to Norfolk and invaded with the Jeep to Nitro. I was in the crowd for that shit. It was a great moment. It was great to see them fucking punch back after WCW had been messing with them for so long because they were so obsessed, and they were overly obsessed, just like TNA was. I do not see that from AEW. You can't ignore WWE. Of course they exist. They're the biggest game in town. They're a household name. There's people in the middle of the Congo desert or the Congo jungle know what WWE is. People living in the rainforest know. Everybody knows what WWE is. You can't ignore them. And if you're doing the same thing as them, you have to, just try to get yourself noticed. So, I don't mind the little shots. I don't think they take it too overboard. And we'll see if CM Punk comes back. Holy shit, any sort of promo he could cut. I don't know what he'll say in that. But it would be pretty interesting, especially if him and Cody can get in that ring together. That'll be some fun stuff. But, all in all, I think this is all really, really good. In terms, though, going all the way back to Chris's super chat from earlier, there's been a lot of Hall and Nash comparisons. I even made the same comparison. I did a couple of months ago. I kind of basically made the same tweet yesterday where I said, have Daniel Bryan show up on Dynamite, hop the barricade wearing all denim, and a couple of weeks later have CM Punk show up and smack Tony Schiavone on the back and start talking about adjectives improperly. Would be funny. But a lot of people kind of pointed out is they were saying, well, do you really want to make it like Hall and Nash? Because back in the NWO days, they made it look like Hall and Nash can beat up the entire locker room, the way they were always out there dominating with baseball bats, and security had to separate them from the rest of the locker room. Nobody's saying that, I don't think. I don't want Daniel Bryan and CM Punk to come in with baseball bats and take over and try to, kill the locker room. I don't think it's going to be like that. I think they're going to be there ready to be a part of the team, actually. So if you brought him in outsider style, I don't know really how you would pull that off, but I think people are making that comparison because this is the closest thing to a Hall and Nash that we got since Hall and Nash. There's never been two really big names kind of together at the same time. They kind of went over to a place together. I mean, the biggest ship jumping I think that took place post WCW buyout was probably Kurt Angle going to TNA. And, if he would have been paired with, I don't know at the time, if he would have been paired with who else was over at the time, with Rey Mysterio. It's a good example. Kurt and Rey jumping over to TNA together would have been a big deal, a bigger deal. So, this is pretty awesome. So anyway, aside from the CM Punk news, we got to talk about Daniel Bryan as well. Let me cruise back over here and make sure I get these other super chats. Domination Warrior, thanks for the $2. Going to F4TF, safe to say Cross. Going to Fight for the Fallen. Safe to say Cross becomes Fallen Prey. We're going to talk about NXT in a minute. I kind of liked the NXT show was just okay on Tuesday, but I loved the great finish to the show where Cross got his hands on William Regal. Joe was furious all night and going nuts looking for him, and then Cross kind of took out Regal at the end. So that match is all but set for TakeOver, which is what we said would happen. I'm excited for that. That's cool that you're going to Fight for the Fallen. I'm actually going to be in North Carolina next week, and Fight for the Fallen is in Charlotte, but I'm not going to the show. Thought about it, but just not possible. Not going to be there, but I'll try my best to catch it on TV. And I saw the card. They've got next week's card kind of laid out. Looks pretty good. We'll talk about that in a minute. You Watt M8, thanks for the $5. Remember when some people called AEW T-shirt company? Yep. And that they wouldn't last a year. They look stupid now. Yeah, a lot of people were just very resistant. The same people that complain about WWE too, which is odd. It's just it's, why would you complain about everything WWE does, but then resist another company coming in and providing us some alternative content? What even would possess you to resist that? The annoying fans on the other side? Seems like a stupid reason to make any decision, is what people on the internet say. But unfortunately, that's the way wrestling Twitter is, or IWC anyway. C-Mac, thanks for the $2. What's up, good Mike? Good to see and hear you, bruh. Good to see you here, man. I'm happy you are here. We got Just Alex in the house. What's up, dude? Oof, Punk and Colt are definitely going to need to have a heart-to-heart. Yeah, you're right. I just said that earlier on. There's a couple of things you got to think about. Punk has actually taken some digs at AEW in the past, because I remember even when he left WWE, I think Jericho was trying to get him on his podcast. And Punk got annoyed at that. I think he said that on Colt's podcast because, of course, Punk did the big Colt Cabana podcast in late 2014 after he left WWE and just spilled the beans on everything. And apparently Jericho was trying to get him in there too. And Punk was, kind of said something to the effect of, oh, he just has ulterior motives, tries to text me like we're bros, but I know he just wants to get me on his podcast to get the numbers and the views or whatever. So he didn't like that. He didn't like the way the Bucks or Cody kind of conducted business in AEW either and took a couple of shots at them. Of course, he's got the very real life problems in history with Colt Cabana. So yeah, things are going to have to be dealt with, but at the same time, just yesterday I recorded a SummerSlam 2005 review that's going to be released next week while I'm gone on vacation, and I talked about the Matt Hardy and Edge stuff, and I just kept going on and on about like how it just blew my mind that those two guys can work together. So I think if they can come together and at least be professional enough to work together and be cordial, you don't have to be BFFs again, but you at least have to be able to coexist behind the scenes, then I think Punk and Cabana can do the same. So you got to think about that when it comes to working out and hammering out the details of a return like that. Do me a favor before we get into Daniel Bryan, smash the thumbs up button for me. I'd appreciate it. Let's get into Daniel Bryan too, because like I said, after we got hit with that big right hand of the CM Punk news and that bombshell dropped, and that was just conversations. That was enough of a bombshell. But it was only that CM Punk was in talks. It wasn't confirmation of anything. It was just enough to get us excited. And it wasn't 100%. Well, apparently what is 100% is the fact that Daniel Bryan, and like I said, I guess we should start calling him Bryan Danielson again, which feels good to say, as apparently, according to Cassidy Haynes of Bodyslam.net, has 100% signed with AEW. And that kind of shocked me because I always kind of thought we would see Daniel Bryan come back in, especially when WWE put him in the main event of WrestleMania, which is another interesting stat we'll mention in a minute. But when you think about it, the report, according to Haynes, says that he wanted to work less dates, which he can get in AEW because they don't run live events, at least not right now. And he wants comparable money for those less dates. He also wants to work in Japan, and he wants to have some sort of creative input on his direction. All of which apparently he got. And those are pretty reasonable requests because Daniel Bryan is not somebody I believe that would ever abuse a creative control. He's too down to earth. He's too cool. He's never going to, that doesn't work for me, brother, anybody. That's just not Daniel Bryan's style. So I think that was probably pretty easy for Tony Khan to agree to type of thing. And plus, he wanted to work in Japan, and WWE just fucking doesn't do that. And if they would, they might have been able to keep a couple of pieces of talent throughout the years if they would have just been at least somewhat open to that. But they're just not going to do it. They're not going to do it. They're Apple. They don't work with anybody. So he got everything he wanted, apparently, and is already put pen to paper. And according to this report, and right now, it's been the only one that's full-blown confirmed it. Daniel Bryan hasn't confirmed anything. AEW hasn't confirmed anything. But apparently, it is a done deal. And he's going to be a part of AEW. And that's fucking awesome. Apparently, there's the report or the rumor is that he's going to debut on that September 22nd Arthur Ashe show in New York. That has already sold over 15,000 tickets. Probably have close to 20K, something like that, when the whole thing is done. I think it's going to be a big house. It's going to be the biggest crowd they've ever drawn. What a place to debut. Holy shit. And what a 1-2 punch. You get CM Punk on All Out in Chicago. You get Daniel Bryan at Arthur Ashe. I mean, that's what I would do. I would not bring them in together. I know we all kind of joke about the Outsiders thing and stuff, but those are two monumental signings. It's like how people say guys should, two legends should have the same retirement match. No, you got to spread that shit out. Undertaker and Triple H should not retire together. They should retire separately. So you do the same thing here. You spread those two big returns out, and, that can make for some pretty awesome moments, especially if Punk comes back at All Out and, Cult of Personality plays. The crowd's going to go fucking apeshit. You don't know where he's going to debut, or you could even pre-announce it and really sell some buys. But I think most fans, if the rumors continue to circulate that Punk's coming in, most people are going to tune in or purchase All Out with the assumption they're probably going to see him there. Because if you don't bring him back there, where the fuck do you bring him back? So I think it would almost be kind of likely. So just a matter of like where he comes and where he shows up. If he confronts a champion, if he waits until after the main event and confronts Hangman Page after he wins the title or something like that. It's going to be a big deal when he comes out. And I'm assuming, I would assume that if he is going to sign there, Tony Khan will secure the rights to Cult of Personality. I don't see why he wouldn't. And it presents an interesting situation with Daniel Bryan too, because if he comes in, it's unfortunate WWE changed his name to Daniel Bryan, but he'll be Bryan Danielson again. And I'm assuming he can use the Flight of the Valkyries or whatever. Something similar there. So for the first time since like Randy Savage in 1994, you're seeing guys jump ship in modern times with their names and their theme music largely intact, although Daniel Bryan's going to be tweaked up a little bit. But that really hasn't happened. I mean, post-WCW buyout, then everybody was doing it, NWO and Booker T and Goldberg to a degree and Ric Flair and shit like that. But pre-buyout, Randy Savage is the only guy that kind of kept his whole entire name and gimmick and theme music and took that Slim Jim deal with him. Although the Pomp and Circumstance was a different version, it was still the same song. And Daniel Bryan, I'm assuming, can do the same unless he would like to reinvent himself and come out to a rock song or something. But that Yes thing, I don't think WWE trademarked the Yes, did they? Hopefully they don't. And that's... hopefully that's something Daniel Bryan is still allowed to do. But if he comes out, you can see that sea of people at Arthur Ashe. Think about the matches he can have, the working agreement, that they already have with New Japan and some of the things he could do over there. Possibilities are endless, man. So that's just awesome. I just think that's just really awesome news. So I hope this turns out to be true. Apparently Cassidy Haynes has some credibility. People have gone to bat for him, including Sean Ross Sapp said that he's got some credibility to him, and bodyslam.net has broke some stories before. So I guess it's a done deal, and that's just extremely interesting, to say the least. Now, I was doing some thinking, and I think Daniel Bryan, I'm certain Daniel Bryan, is the only person in history, if this story turns out to be true, that has main evented a WrestleMania and worked for another wrestling company within the same year, or in the same year. Nobody's ever done that. The closest thing I can think of to that would have been 2006 Kurt Angle. But he wasn't in the main event of WrestleMania, but he did wrestle for the title. Was he champion going into that? I know Ray won the title. Was Angle champion or Randy Orton champion? I forgot. But that was a title match, and that was a double main event, a semi-main event, whatever it was. So that's probably the closest thing, because that was a big, big title match at WrestleMania, and then Angles in TNA just a few months later. This would be the first time that's ever happened. So that's a pretty big first. A lot of firsts here with this situation, which is what makes it all the more interesting, especially coming off a year and a half of just almost like a holding pattern for wrestling. Even AEW, who is doing their best to put on good shows, it's still empty arena bullshit because of the pandemic, and WWE was really treading water there for a while to where they were just putting us to sleep, and we were slowly turning into zombies. Now wrestling is back, fans are back, WWE's making waves with the Cena and the Goldberg and the Big E winning Money in the Bank, and we got a big SummerSlam with a huge crowd coming up in Vegas, big takeover on the horizon. They're doing things. AEW has been really rolling hard since fans came back. Their dynamites since fans have returned have been incredible, and they got another couple of shows with the Fight for the Fallen coming up. They got the Homecoming back at Daly's Place in a couple of weeks, and now with the reports of the two biggest free agents in modern history, both possibly coming in, it ain't a horrible time to be a wrestling fan, that's for sure. It's very exciting, and that's what we need, excitement. We need to be stimulated. Our brains, our minds, our bodies have been atrophied from all these months of sitting with our thumbs up our ass. So now that things are kind of getting back to normal and wrestling is making some news and making some waves, there is no way I can look at that as anything other than positive. You know what I mean? So this is all good, and we should all be happy and not be little negative Nancy motherfuckers. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, yeah, we'll talk more about that as we go in. We're going to talk about Dynamite here in just a second, but we'll touch on NXT first. Let me see if there's any more super dupers rolling in. Spaz Phoenix is back. Thanks, dude, for the $5. Kind of want to see Bryan and Punk come to the black and gold and fight for the NXT tag titles just to watch the internet eat itself. I would hope they would win those tag titles. Funny thing is, Bryan and Punk would be awesome in NXT, but according to WWE, NXT is a developmental company, and that was never more clear than last Monday on Raw when mid-40s Jeff Hardy, who's lost to everybody on the roster, pinned their NXT champion out of nowhere. Way to go, WWE. I was really hoping, though, the funny thing is, I know your comment is a joke, but I was actually hoping Daniel Bryan would go to NXT for a match, like at least one. I kind of thought he wanted to do that. But when you think about it, if all that report is true, which apparently it is, all that stuff makes sense. He's got to be able to work less dates. Don't forget, this guy was off on the shelf for like 3 or 4 years because he couldn't get cleared until he came back. So he's not going to be able to wrestle a balls-to-the-wall schedule. He's got a family at home. He wants to preserve, his life. So he needs to work less dates, but, he still needs to make comparable money. Maybe not the same money, but comparable when you take away the dates that he wouldn't be working for WWE. And he can do Japan, and he can spread his wings creatively, and he's not handcuffed or held hostage or imprisoned by that mega monster, WWE. Makes all the sense in the world for him to jump. But WWE also, they did treat him well. They treat him like a big deal, multi-time champion, got the big WrestleMania moment, and multiple good runs in the company. Going to be in the Hall of Fame one day, you'd assume. But he's going to go do what he has to do, and I think that's awesome. So good for him. Michael Kumo, appreciate 5 more. I figured Bryan will have the final countdown for entrance theme like when he was in Indies. Yeah, somebody mentioned that. And again, they would be coming down to securing the rights for that. And yes, Angle was champion in the world title match. Thank you for that. And I love the final countdown. Any of you Detroit fans out there, or Detroit natives, or people from Michigan, the Detroit Pistons used the final countdown, or used to back in the day, as the team's entrance back in the Bad Boys days, and the great team they had in 2004 with Rashid and Rip Hamilton and Chauncey and guys like that. And it was such a great production. The fireworks and the pyro would go off, and the PA announcer would announce the team, and the final countdown. What an awesome song. So yeah, Daniel Bryan could just come out to that. But then again, I think fans now, he's been in, it just depends on what they want to do. If Daniel Bryan wants to try to separate what he's doing now from his WWE run and kind of have, not reinvent himself, because he's still going to be himself, in his personality and how he wrestles. But if he wants to, it's like, how like Kobe and Michael and LeBron all switched numbers at some point in their career. Daniel Bryan might want to do that. But, they can probably come up with a version of his current theme that would fit right in AEW and would get that crowd going and yesing and all that stuff. And then AEW would have the yes chants in their pocket. You can't trademark a chant, right? So if the fans want to chant some shit, WWE just sue the whole audience. I don't know. So not sure how that works, but it just seems like if Vince has an idea when he's taking a shit, he trademarks it. They trademarked, what is it? Complaining is not conversation, which that phrase alone is actually complaining. I don't know. Fucking weirdos. So yeah, I just hope that they can go, and I hope it's awesome. Spaz 5 more. Punk comes in NXT, scoops up Fish, O'Reilly, Strong, and the rest of the Diamond Mine, creates the straight edge era and mess with Adam Cole. I'd be into that, but I'd almost think the options in AEW are way more fun. But speaking of NXT, let's just briefly touch on Tuesday's show. Only like 2 things I want to mention here, and then we'll talk about Fyter Fest for last night. Number 1 was Raquel Gonzalez defended the title against Xia Li, and she beat her. There was a really nasty spot at the end where she kind of like Vader bombed her right on her ribs, right on Xia Li's ribs, and it looked like Xia was hurt. Refs attended to her for a few minutes. Raquel ended up grabbing her, hitting her finish, and retaining the title. And apparently Xia Li is okay, but that was a pretty good match and hard-hitting match. And all I want to tell you about Raquel Gonzalez is that if you are interested in spoilers, read the NXT spoilers. Some interesting shit happened there. NXT, I believe, is going to tape their next 2 weeks, I think, because they've been bumped to Sci-Fi due to the Olympics. So I think the next 2 Tuesdays are going to be on Sci-Fi. So those shows probably aren't going to be too crazy, and I believe they are pre-taping them, and spoilers for at least one of them is out, and something kind of major happened there. So if you want to check it out, you can, but nobody spoil it in the chat. Don't be dicks. Let people read it if they want to read it. The other big thing I want to talk about, of course, is Samoa Joe and Karrion Kross. Now, last week, before Kross went to his field trip on Raw and got beat by Jeff Hardy, they did the deal where he beat Gargano in a really hard-fought, awesome match with Samoa Joe as the referee. He chokes out Samoa Joe after the match, setting up what's probably obviously going to be a Samoa Joe in-ring return. I don't think he'd be getting as physical as he has been getting if he wasn't cleared. So the writing seemed to be on the wall and completely obvious. This is what they're doing and where they're going, and this is what they need. Karrion Kross needs a big, bad challenger like that because, he's so far he's been wrestling guys, well, Keith Lee, he took him down, but other than that, it's been like Balor and Gargano and, guys like that. So this is what you need to do, especially if you do want to send Kross to the main roster. You're going to have to take the title off of him. I'd rather Kross lose to somebody like Joe than somebody like, an Adam Cole who just, is really small. Not that I think Adam Cole is a 20 times better wrestler than Karrion Kross, but if you want to send Karrion to the main roster as a badass, I'm not having him lose to a guy that weighs half as him. You know what I mean? So he needs somebody as big, as bad, as tough, as strong. And Joe is really your best option to do that. So Joe's pissed. Tuesday night comes out demanding Karrion Kross. Regal gets in his face and tells Joe that he's out of hand, he's out of control. Let me deal with Kross. He didn't attack Samoa Joe, NXT management. He attacked Samoa Joe, the referee. We'll deal with it the right way or whatever. It's not why I brought you here. What all the shit he said, lectured Samoa Joe. Joe's fucking angry, looking for Kross all night. At the end of the night, Joe comes out to the ring, demanding Kross, get out here, boy. It was a lot like the Wendy. The Wendy's like, Kross, get out here. Whatever he said was kind of funny. Demanding Kross shows up. Kross shows up on the screen, has the NXT title. He says, because of this, I can go where I want. I can do what I want. I can hurt whoever I want. Camera pans back to reveal a beaten up William Regal right at his feet. And then Joe jumps out of the ring, runs to the back, runs outside. Kross speeds off in the car, and William Regal has been attacked by Karrion Kross now. So Dave Meltzer was the first one that I saw who reported that Samoa Joe versus Karrion Kross is set for the August 22nd takeover. I don't think WWE has announced this yet. That'll probably go down on the tapings, I would assume, or maybe it already has. So that's going to be your match, and why wouldn't it? That's what they're setting up. This is the angle they've been running from the minute Samoa Joe came back. As soon as he came back and got in the ring and Kross was there, I'm like, there you go. There's your match, and they've been building the whole thing ever since. So this is going to be a pretty good main event to have for TakeOver. Now, unfortunately, as of right now, TakeOver is set to be at the CWC, Capitol Wrestling Center in Orlando, which sucks because a match like this should have like a crowd, like an audience, you know what I mean? So I think they've set it to be there, but they might be looking for a venue. That is kind of how I gather it. So we'll see where TakeOver winds up taking place, but it would be awesome if they could secure a venue, put 3,000 people there, or something, or maybe even something bigger. But just put a good amount of people there to where you can have that moment. You don't hear everybody so individually the way you do at the Performance Center, the way all that is set up. It's just not enough people there, and you just don't get that. I miss that TakeOver atmosphere. It has a vibe. It has a feel. And I think a match like this should have that. So hopefully they can find a place to do it. Otherwise, it will be at the CWC. I assume I'm going to be able to watch that. I'm going to be tired, though. I'm going to SummerSlam. So Saturday night, I'll be, after the pay-per-view, back to the hotel, get some sleep, and then I'm driving back to San Diego here. So it's going to take me a while. And I'm going to Monday Night Raw the next night. So on Sunday, I should be home in time to watch TakeOver and do a review of it. So at least I'll be up here. I'll share with you some of my SummerSlam festivities and some of the stuff I did a little bit there. And then I'm going to be at Raw in San Diego the night after that. So TakeOver's falling in between that for me, but I'm going to find a way to watch that match. It's going to be good stuff. They've also announced Walter defending the NXT UK title against Dragunov on that show as well. So that's a pretty good idea. I haven't seen Walter in a while. It's time to put that belt on the line, man. Know what I mean? Anyway, all right, that knocks out the NXT chatter. We'll move into Dynamite now, and we'll wrap up any other thoughts people might want to say about CM Punk and Daniel Bryan. Karrion Kross and Keith Lee in talks with AEW. So when will Kross lose to Matt Hardy? I don't know. Maybe soon. Yeah, Matt Hardy made some sort of a joke, I think, on Twitter. Said, isn't Jeff Hardy NXT champion? My God, yeah, nobody... Good to see you, How Wheezy. Glad you're here watching it work. David Brown's in the house, too. Just want to say hi to you guys and Jose, Lorenzo, Anthony, anybody else I missed, welcome. Thanks for being here. We got to talk a little bit about last night's Fyter Fest. Oh my God, last night I was working, but I was able to catch a large part of the show on my phone, but I still wanted to come home last night and watch it through, to kind of make notes for today's review and stuff. And I went to hit what I thought was play, but I was just kind of zoned out, and I deleted the episode off my DVR. I was so pissed, but I was still able to catch, most of the show, but I really wasn't planning today to go through match by match, move by move results and review of this show, because this was mostly going to be dominated by the CM Punk and Bryan Danielson news. But I do want to talk about last night's show because it was awesome, and it had some interesting moments and some surprises on there too. Shout out to a YouTuber, fellow Twitter follower Pulse, who was in the front row singing Jericho's Judas theme. Good to see him there. Hope he had a great time. I've exchanged some DMs with him before because I know he lives in North Carolina. I was like, can we just chatted a bit? Cool dude, always been super nice to me. Cool to see him right there in the front of that. The opening match was Chris Jericho facing Shawn Spears. Now this begins the labors of Jericho that has been set in place by MJF. If Jericho wants a rematch with MJF, he's going to have to get through all of these obstacles first. And the first one is facing Shawn Spears in a match where Shawn Spears can use a chair, but Jericho cannot. Jericho winds up finding a way to win this here. Tully Blanchard tries to get involved. Sammy Guevara comes out and stops him. Jericho winds up, I think he couldn't use the chair as a weapon, but he could ram Spears into it, because that's pretty much what he did. After Tully was neutralized by Sammy, Jericho kind of rams Spears into the corner where there's a chair, and then turns around and hits him with a Judas effect and beats him for the win. MJF was on commentary for this. He hops off headset. He goes to the rampway in the aisleway to say, okay, that's one labor of Jericho done, but next week at Fight for the Fallen, you're going to have to face somebody who's robbed a bank. And as soon as he said that, everybody knew who he was talking about. And he goes, Nick Cage. I said Nick Cage. Nick Gage. And he gets an enormous pop from the audience. Now, some people don't know who Nick Gage is. I was largely unfamiliar with him. I knew he was a crazy light tube wrestler, but really got to know more about his background in the Dark Side of the Ring episode and things like that. Heard his name, seen his name around the internet for years and years and years, but really never followed truly what he did, because that type of wrestling never appealed to me. But he's got a really interesting story, and he's a super hardcore guy. And he goes back with a lot of wrestlers who are big stars now, namely Jon Moxley, who also has that hardcore extreme wrestling background. And it was, a lot of people say he deserves it. We saw, he's had a crazy life and a tumultuous life filled with legal troubles and drug abuse and jail time and more jail time. But he's somehow survived through all of that, and he's got a reputation of just being an absolutely insane wrestler. He nearly murdered David Arquette. And you talk about an obstacle for Jericho. Holy shit, who thought Jericho would be, in his 50s having to worry about being mutilated by another man. But that's a big deal. The crowd went nuts for that. It was cool to just see Nick Gage kind of get that moment, I don't know if he's going to be signed full-time there, if this is probably just an in-and-out type of thing, I would assume, although I don't know. But just for him to be there, get that reaction, it's probably going to be a pretty big thrill. It was a pretty big thrill for him. And now he's got to face Jericho next week. I don't know how crazy they're going to get with this. They can only go so nuts. I don't know if TNT wants light tubes out there or not, or switchblades or staple guns or chainsaws. We'll see what happens. Jericho later on in the show would reveal that Nick Gage is going to be facing the Painmaker, Chris Jericho, the man who beat Naito, the man who beat Tanahashi. So he's going to be facing him instead, and that should be a pretty crazy, wild fucking match next week. It's going to be cool. I'm almost bummed out I'm not going to Fight for the Fallen, but, going to be good stuff there. Other big news, return or debut, sort of, in AEW was Chavo Guerrero. Chavo Guerrero has burst onto the scene to now start managing Andrade. I guess the fans were bitching about Vicky Guerrero, so he said, I'm keeping it in the family, and he brings out Chavo instead. Chavo cuts a promo talking up Andrade, and that's when the Death Triangle comes out. Now, Andrade had already kind of hinted that he's got a few things to say to them, and he's looking for them, so they come out here, and basically Andrade says that Phoenix and Penta would be so much better with him. So you don't work for Pac anymore, you work for me. And then Pac is like, I don't know what fucking planet you're on, dude, but that's not the way it works. And you almost felt like this was setting up maybe a turn I kind of feel like Penta and Phoenix might be better with Andrade as well. That might be a more fitting faction. So I'm like, are they going to turn on Pac here? But they didn't. But I think that still might be coming. I'm not sure. But before it does, I would really like to get an Andrade and Pac match. I think it'll happen regardless if those guys turn or not. But holy shit, let's get those guys in the ring right away. So Chavo is now joining Andrade's character. That's awesome. Love Chavo, and to see him kind of be tied to the Guerrero name, I think is really helping solidify how big of a player he is, in terms of Latino wrestlers and stuff. So that's awesome. Can't wait to see more of that, and can't wait to see. That's just a little story on the show that I find incredibly intriguing, and that's good stuff. So we'll see what happens in upcoming weeks there. Darby Allin took on Wheeler Yuta, who had Orange Cassidy with him, and of course Darby Allin had Sting. Now, Darby gets the win here, but the best part of the match was on the outside of the ring when Cassidy and Sting came face-to-face on the floor. They did the little shin kicks, and I think what popped me was Sting doing the little weak-ass chest pounds there, which was so fucking good. Of course, some fans were flipping their shit. I'm sure it was Cornette's favorite segment. But I'm going to go out on a limb here based on the news that dropped yesterday about these two big free agent signings, the fact that they're selling tickets, the fact that fan reaction is good, audience is good, numbers are decent, they're creating waves, they're creating buzz, and big-time, major, legitimate names want to be involved with this company. I'm just going to have this crazy, radical idea. I know it's crazy, but I'm just going to say it. AEW is not a mud show. Who would have thought? AEW is not a T-shirt company. Here we all thought they were, right? Or at least some people did. But Cassidy and Sting doing the thing I thought was awesome. No matter what you thought about that segment, shout out to friend of the channel, Brian Zane, who I saw on Twitter today, said, whether you liked it or not liked it for whatever reason, if you didn't like it for whatever reason, I guarantee you that at least, minimum, 5 of your favorite wrestlers did like it. And I guarantee you, there's no sourpuss wrestler in the locker room. I wish they wouldn't do that. They probably thought it was fucking great. So awesome. What a great rub for Cassidy. Especially if he has a long career, wins championships. He'll look back 20 years from now when Sting might be dead and say, wow, that time I got to interact with Sting and create that moment and, I'll never forget it, and it helped make me and motivated me to be a better wrestler or whatever. It was just, it was a nice little feather in my cap or a memory to have or whatever. That's like cool stuff. I don't think I just don't understand why wrestling fans refuse to have fun. I don't want the entire show to be shin kicks. But when you have that part of the show, little comedy factor there that Cassidy's character has, he's extremely over. If you haven't noticed, it's not like the crowd runs to the bathroom and goes and gets popcorn when he comes out there. They're marking the fuck out. So have some fun, relax, lighten up. Remove the stick from your anus, please. He'd be back later, Orange Cassidy would, to take on the Blade. Cassidy's backed up by Statlander. Blade's got Bunny with him. Cassidy got the win. Pretty good little match there, too. So can Cassidy continue to roll? I would love to get a Cassidy and Darby feud. That would be fun and interesting, I think. One of them might have to go heel, but I think it would be pretty fun. We also had the AEW Women's title on the line, advertised match. Britt Baker defending against Nyla Rose. A little clunky at spots. I watched the whole thing, but still an okay match. Britt retained in the end, which I'm happy about. We didn't expect her to drop the title quite yet. And, of course, in the main event, it was fucking bonkers, bloody, brutal, crazy. Wrestle Kingdom 14 rematch. Texas Death Match for the IWGP United States title. Jon Moxley defending against Lance Archer. It was a fun match, crazy, and they put the belt back on Archer. Moxley beat him for the title at Wrestle Kingdom. I think in between then, did he pass it to Juice? I feel like he dropped it and won it back or something in between there. But he was the one that beat Archer for it initially in a death match in Japan, and now coming back and doing it here. A couple little callbacks to the match here at Fyter Fest, which was awesome. In the end, Archer pretty much puts down Moxley clean. Moxley does not answer the 10 count, and Lance Archer is your new IWGP United States champion. Belt changes hands on Dynamite in a North American promotion. That's pretty cool. That's really cool. And apparently next week, we've got Hikuleo taking on Lance Archer for the title. Haku's big boy. I guess, is already the number one contender. That match is going to be in Dynamite next week, too. So we're going to have another one. So Fight for the Fallen next week. So far, we've got lined up Jericho versus Nick Gage. We've got Santana and Ortiz taking on FTR. They had a little segment on AEW, which was good as well, or on Dynamite last night. And I'll tell you what, as much as I love FTR, I'm rooting for Santana and Ortiz in that match. I think it's time for them to be put over. We've got a 6-man, Christian Cage, Luchasaurus, and Jungle Boy taking on the Hardy family. Like I said, we've got Archer defending the U.S. title, and we've got the Elite versus Hangman and the Dark Order. All of that is on tap for next week, looking pretty good. The week after that, they're back at Daly's Place. I believe that's August 4th for Homecoming. Even though they were just there, they just said goodbye to Daly's Place a few weeks ago. They're back here for, I think, one final time, and that will probably be the last time for a while, probably at least until next year. I would assume, I could be wrong, that they go back to Jacksonville, to Daly's Place. And for that, they've got Malachi Black advertised to face Cody Rhodes, so they are not saving that for All Out. They're doing it now. So we're going to get Black in the ring right away. That's awesome. And I believe we're also getting a Miro title defense, although I don't know the Miro title defense. I don't have that written down which show that's on. Help me out. Is that Fight for the Fallen or Homecoming? I didn't catch it. And by the way, I did catch Miro's promo last night. When I saw it, I'm like, Siri, what is a stud? And then Miro's image appears. Like, he looked so good. I'm loving this Redeemer character. His promos are so good. They're so good. I just love what he says. I love how he looks. I like the look of the title. I am not even considering taking the belt off of Miro until early November. You know what I mean? He's got to have a run with this thing for a bit because he's so good. And again, I'm glad to see him finally finding his niche. Took him a little while. He came in, didn't know what to do after the Rusev stuff. A little directionless at first, kind of goofing off with Kip Sabian and the video games and the wedding thing. And it wasn't, we all hoped that him going to AEW, he would start being utilized to his full potential and be the badass we know he can be. And now that he is that, and the way he took that title from Darby Allin very definitively and aggressively, and he's got an iron grip on it right now. So he looks badass. He's completely changed his attitude, even his look and his persona and what his gimmick is. And that's how you do things. You can't just be over and have it all figured out on night one. So they figured it out. They realized what wasn't working. Some of that shit with Kip Sabian wasn't working. We all said so. I said so. Not my favorite thing. I didn't like the video game or the arcade brawl or whatever they did. Thought it was dumb. Miro deserves better. Now he's getting better because they realized it too. That ain't working. Let's try something else. Miro now, I believe, has found something that works. So he's running with it, and he's doing a fantastic job. So made me forget all about Rusev. Now he's our Redeemer, and he's awesome. Also, some news to report. Thunder Rosa is officially signed with AEW. Of course, she's been there a lot defending the NWA title and working matches there. That great Brutal Classic she had with Britt Baker a couple months ago. But now she has officially signed with AEW, and she is all elite. Very happy for her to get that contract officially. She deserves it. She's awesome, and I'm glad that they're keeping her full-time now because that women's division has only gotten better. Remember how bad it was when it started? And I said, okay, we can give them a pass for having a bad women's division because you can't expect to have a great one when WWE's got like every woman signed. So it's going to take some time to build your division, and they've done exactly that. They've built it. Could still be better, but they've added some names. The women's title now is around an actual person, an actual star, a great heel, someone who can talk, and someone who can kind of be that cornerstone or that Charlotte, if you will, of your division. They have that now in Britt Baker. She's incredible. So they can build around that. They're doing that, and Thunder Rosa is a huge addition. So that's awesome. So like I said, AEW is hitting on all cylinders right now, and if they can pull off this coup, which is exactly what it would be, if they can bring in Danielson and CM Punk, we have got ourselves a whole different looking wrestling business. And if you just rewind 5 years ago and try to envision this, could you even do it? Was there even talks of the Bucks and Kenny and Cody starting their own promotion back in 2016? There might have been, but they certainly weren't, being talked about frequently online or anything. So we've come a long way, man, in just the last few years. So I see very little negative news coming out of the past 48 hours of developments in the wrestling world. So we will see. And I have managed right at the top of the hour to get out everything I intended to in my notes. So from here, we can answer some questions in the chat. I'll see if there's any more supers rolling in, chit-chat a little bit, and then I'm going to get out of here because I got to go to work. Couple of scheduling announcements to make for you. I'll be back on Saturday again for the podcast. We'll talk about SmackDown, which I think is going to be interesting because it's being combined with that music festival thing, whatever that's about. Not really sure. That's going on tomorrow. So we'll be up Saturday to discuss that and any more developments that we might hear about Punk and Daniel Bryan. And then on Sunday, this coming Sunday, we're going to do a watch-along. SummerSlam in 1998, Highway to Hell. We'll be up here at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific for that, for a full watch-along. Watch-alongs are fun, and we're going to do that Sunday night. And then the very next morning, I leave for vacation. I'm out of town for a week, so no Raw review, no NXT and AEW review next week, and no Winged Eagle podcast, and no watch-along the following Sunday. So you're going to get one video out of me only, and I'm going to release that, I believe, on Wednesday, so prior to Dynamite, and it's going to be a classic SummerSlam review. SummerSlam 2005. I'm editing it right now. I recorded it yesterday. What a show, man. What a crazy-ass show. So I will release that while I'm gone. I'll set that to premiere Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, and that'll be the only content you'll get from me while I'm gone. And then I get back the following Monday after that, August 2nd. Yeah, August 2nd I get back. That's a Monday. Not sure if I'm going to be up for a Raw review or not, because I get in at like 1 in the afternoon. I might be exhausted. It depends. But if I can do it and watch it and ever have energy to do it, I will do it. But prepared to be good mic workless for about a week. But then when I get back, it is balls to the wall, getting prepared for SummerSlam. Very excited about that. Going to be there and got some stuff planned. So it'll be fun. It'll be a lot of fun. But anyway, let's talk to the chat. For those of you who are in here right now, do me a favor and smash the thumbs up. I would very much appreciate it. Stephen Scott, I was trying to send you a super chat earlier, but how would you debut CM Punk and Daniel Bryan? Also, do you remember when they were champs with Zack Ryder in a 6-man tag coming through the crowd? Yeah, I vaguely remember that. I loved it when they were both champs at the same time. That was very cool. It depends. Like, we talked about that already, how we would debut Daniel Bryan and CM Punk. If you didn't hear my comments earlier, we spent the first 45 minutes talking about these two guys. But I think CM Punk's best place to debut would be All Out because it's in Chicago. So you can't not do it there. There'd be no other place you could do it. As a matter of fact, 2 years ago at All Out, before All Out, all throughout the summer, I wouldn't shut the fuck up predicting that CM Punk was going to appear. He should do it. Take the money. It'd be such a huge moment. Chicago, hometown, big FU to WWE. I'm over here now. And he didn't do it. And now 2 years later, now that AEW has kind of grown a little bit, you know, he's got an opportunity to go. All Out is the place for him. And then Daniel Bryan, the rumors are he will be at the Arthur Ashe Stadium show on September 22nd. Yeah, I don't like, that's the thing. We talked about how great this is, but I mean, I'm also not the type of person to say like how Nick is, WWE's shitting bricks or WWE's nervous or worried or concerned. No, they're not. They're in no danger of going out of business due to AEW. They're in no danger of AEW overtaking them in business and all of that. They're so far away from that. They just don't like it that there is another game in town now. And they do things like we saw a couple of years ago prior to the pandemic. They were in full talent hoarding mode. I know they reached out to CM Punk when AEW started to begin because they wanted to prevent him from going over there. They were just grabbing guys and signing them. So WWE definitely goes out of their way to hinder the growth of AEW because, number one, they're assholes, and number two, that's just business. You know, but at the same time, at the end of the day, they're not worried about anything. They're still going to be printing money. Look at the fucking money this company takes in. They're networks are giving them billions of dollars to run shows. Other countries are giving them $1 billion to run live events over there. They got more money than they even know what to do with. So they're not concerned with it. They're WWE. They're not going anywhere. It's going to take a lot to really unravel them, so to speak. But as fans, what I've always said, what we just have to hope for is to have another company out there. Forget if it's who's number one and who's number two. Just have another company that you can watch and decide which one of those two you like better, or you can be like me and enjoy both, which I do, and I will continue to do. As much as I want AEW to grow, I sure as shit don't want WWE to go away. Because then what sense would that make? Then AEW is just your new WWE and we're right back in the same fucking boat. And then it's Tony Khan going nuts and rewriting shows every day in his 70s. We don't want that. So we want competition. Competition is good. It's not about winning and losing or anything like that. It's about having two companies competing with each other, fans being fans of one or not another, or being fans of both. Either way, the wrestling fans benefit regardless of what type of attitude you decide to take. Because I can attest to this, as much as I give shit to all the AEW haters out there that just have this irrational bullshit anger for some reason. And like I said, I know it's completely fueled by the fans on the other side, clouding their judgment. But I can almost kind of relate to that a little bit, because back in the Monday Night Wars, I was firmly behind the WWE. And as many of you remember, this channel was born out of just frustration with TNA and these obnoxious fans that, thought that TNA was going to put WWE out of business. I'm like, what are you smoking? Do you even understand life, business, reality, anything? That's not an option. What you want to hope for is that TNA grows and becomes a successful second option in professional wrestling. And they were that for a short time until they pissed it all away. That's what you want to hope for. Forget this, get this overtaking WWE shit out of your head. And forget about that and just want another wrestling company. Because back in the day when WCW and WWE both existed, even before the war got really ugly between the two, because there was a time when WCW was just, 90, when Ted Turner first bought it in the early 90s there, they weren't any legitimate threat to WWE, but they did have some big stars there, and it was another place for people to go. And I loved watching wrestling at 6:05 on Saturdays. It was fun to watch something else other than WWE and what I see from them. WCW was different. It was presented differently. It did have some different characters and some different stars there. It was an alternative, and I did enjoy watching it from time to time. I didn't become so anti-WCW until Bischoff was giving away the results on Nitro and being such a fucking prick. That's when I was starting to get really disgusted with them. And TNA, it was the same thing. But here, like we talked about earlier, I don't see a lot of those bad habits in AEW the way I saw with them, which gives me hope that this can be pretty awesome for wrestling fans. So anyway, we shall keep our fingers crossed. TNA does still exist. I know, technically their Impact. The Rolling Loud stage collapsed. I wonder what WWE is going to do. I wasn't aware of that story. Yikes. I was kind of curious how that SmackDown is going to look tomorrow, because I know nothing about the Rolling Loud. I'm completely illiterate to it. Thank you for that, Stone Cold. Hell, little man. The Yes merch is copyrighted, but not the chants. Yeah, you can't sue the audience. I was joking about that earlier. Gamer Maker TV, that's what the reports are, that he is signed with AEW. You need to rewind to the beginning of this video and hear all about that, because we talked about it at length. And now I've got to get out of here because I got to head to work now. Like I said, I'm working my butt off until I leave for vacation. So the next time you will see me is on Saturday afternoon. We will talk about tomorrow's SmackDown and any other wrestling news that seems to have broke between now and then or does break. We'll discuss that on Saturday as well. We'll be back on Sunday for the watch-along of Highway to Hell SummerSlam 98. And then you'll get a pre-recorded video from me next Wednesday while I'm on vacation. That's what's on tap. So appreciate it. Make sure you smash the thumbs up out the door. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. Tap that notifications bell for me. And go over to Twitter. Follow me right now. You guys have a good afternoon, and I will catch you on Saturday. Peace.
This has been a Good Mic Work Commentaries production. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/goodmicwork. Follow Greg Morgan on Twitter at goodmicwork and visit goodmicworkcommentariescomp1903 for all the latest podcast and video content.